Beneath one of the most visited ancient monuments in the Western Hemisphere, buried under thousands of tons of limestone that tourists climb over by the millions every year, sits a structure almost nobody who visits ever thinks about. Not the pyramid they see, not even the pyramid hidden inside that pyramid, a secret archaeologists have known about since the 1930s. A third structure, deeper still, discovered only through technology that lets scientists see through solid stone without ever touching it, sitting directly above a flooded underground river that the ancient Maya themselves seem to have gone out of their way to seal off from the world above. This is the real story of what lies beneath the Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, a structure that turns out to be layered like a nesting doll with a water-filled sinkhole hidden at its very heart, and a deliberately blocked passageway that archaeologists still haven't been able to fully explore. To understand why this discovery matters, and why it's taken decades of careful, incremental scientific work to even partially uncover, you first need to understand the pyramid everyone actually sees when they visit Chichen Itza, because what's visible on the surface is already remarkable enough to explain why the site draws millions of visitors every year. The pyramid known as El Castillo, Spanish for the castle, but more properly called the Temple of Kukulkan, after the feathered serpent deity it was built to honor, stands at the center of the Chichen Itza archaeological complex in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Built sometime between the 9th and 12th centuries, during the height of the Itza Kokom culture, the pyramid rises 24 meters, or about 79 feet, and features a design so precisely calculated that it functions as a working astronomical instrument. The structure has 365 steps in total, one for each day of the solar year, distributed across its 4 staircases, an intentional encoding of the Maya calendar system directly into the building's architecture. Twice a year, during the spring and fall equinoxes, the specific angle of the setting sun combines with the pyramid's stepped terrace design to cast a shadow pattern along the northern staircase that appears to show a giant serpent slithering down the pyramid's face, joining a carved stone serpent head at the base of the stairs, creating the illusion of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, physically descending from the temple at the top down toward the earth below. This is one of the most famous and most precisely engineered astronomical alignments anywhere in the ancient world, and it's been drawing visitors specifically to witness this exact phenomenon for generations. What most of those visitors don't realize is that the pyramid they're looking at, the one built between the 9th and 12th centuries that produces this remarkable equinox effect, isn't actually the original structure that once stood on this exact spot. It's a shell, built directly on top of and completely encasing an older pyramid that came before it. This first layer of the mystery isn't new information. Archaeologists discovered it back in 1931 during early excavations of the site, when researchers found an interior staircase leading up into the heart of the visible pyramid. Following that staircase inward, they found an entirely separate earlier temple structure, sealed completely inside the later pyramid's mass, a structure that had been fully encased rather than demolished when the Maya builders constructed the newer, larger pyramid directly around and over it. Inside this hidden inner temple, researchers made a genuinely spectacular find. A red-painted stone throne carved in the shape of a jaguar, its surface inlaid with 74 pieces of jade to simulate the animal's distinctive spotted coat, its eyes formed from the same green stone, its teeth and fangs rendered in white flint. This jaguar throne, along with a companion sculpture known as a chakmul, a reclining figure believed to have served as a receptacle for ceremonial offerings, remains one of the most visually striking artifacts ever recovered from the entire Chichen Itza site, and it had been sitting completely hidden, sealed inside solid stone for roughly 7 centuries before anyone in the modern era laid eyes on it again. For decades after that 1931 discovery, this was where the story of what lies beneath El Castillo effectively ended. A pyramid within a pyramid, with a jade-studded jaguar throne sealed between them, was already an extraordinary archaeological find on its own. It took the development of considerably more advanced non-invasive scanning technology that didn't exist when researchers made that original 1930s discovery, to reveal that the story actually goes considerably deeper than anyone had previously realized. The next major breakthrough came in 2015, when a research team led by geophysicist René Chavez Segura from the Institute of Geophysics at Mexico's National Autonomous University, commonly known by its Spanish acronym UNAM, conducted a detailed survey of the ground beneath and around the pyramid using a technique called electrical resistivity tomography. This method works by measuring how electrical current moves through different materials underground. Solid limestone bedrock, water-filled cavities, and open-air pockets each conduct electricity differently. And by systematically measuring these variations across a carefully mapped grid, researchers can build up a detailed picture of what's actually sitting beneath the surface, all without excavating, drilling, or disturbing a single stone of the structure sitting above. Using this technique, Chavez's team confirmed something that had long been suspected but never definitively proven. The Pyramid of Kukulkan sits directly atop a cenote, a naturally occurring water-filled sinkhole formed within the limestone bedrock that underlies the entire Yucatan Peninsula. This particular cenote sits roughly 20 meters, or about 65 feet, beneath the pyramid, and researchers found that one corner of the massive stone structure actually rests directly on the edge of this underground cavity, a detail significant enough that it raised genuine concerns among the research team about the structural stability of that specific corner of the pyramid over the long term. This finding carried real significance beyond simply being an interesting geological detail, because cenotes held profound religious and cosmological importance within ancient Maya culture, considerably beyond their practical value as a water source in a region without any above-ground rivers or lakes. The Yucatan Peninsula's geology, formed from porous limestone, doesn't support surface rivers the way many other landscapes do. Instead, water flows and collects underground, occasionally breaking through to the surface in the form of cenotes, sinkholes that expose the water table below. The most famous cenote at Chichen Itza, the Cenote Sagrado, or Sacred Cenote, located at the northern edge of the site, is well documented as having served as a site of significant ritual importance, connected to the rain, god Chak, where archaeologists have recovered valuable ceremonial offerings including jade, gold, and copper artifacts, alongside physical evidence indicating that human sacrifice was also practiced there as part of these religious rituals. Given this well-established religious significance of cenotes within Maya cosmology, the discovery that the single most important pyramid at the entire site, the temple dedicated to the feathered serpent god Kukulkan himself, was deliberately built directly on top of another cenote, suggested something considerably more intentional than simple architectural coincidence. Archaeologist Guillermo de Anda, who did not participate in this specific 2015 study, but who has spent years researching the broader underwater and underground cave systems surrounding Chichen Itza, noted that this discovery may help confirm that the Maya deliberately incorporated symbolic representations of their cosmological worldview directly into the design and placement of their most sacred temples and structures, with the cenotes surrounding the site potentially representing the four cardinal directions, and this specific underground river running beneath the central pyramid potentially representing the symbolic center of the Maya universe itself, conceived of in their cosmology as a great tree with roots reaching down into the underworld below. That 2015 discovery of the hidden cenote would have already represented a genuinely significant addition to our understanding of the site on its own. But the same non-invasive scanning approach that revealed the cenote's existence led directly to an even more surprising discovery the following year. In 2016, using an updated, more advanced version of this same electrical resistivity technique, called three-dimensional electric resistivity tomography, researchers placed 96 separate electrodes around the pyramid's exterior and used the resulting data to construct a detailed digital map of the structure's interior. What that map revealed was genuinely unexpected. A third pyramid, distinct from both the fully visible outer structure and the smaller inner temple discovered back in 1931, sitting nested even deeper within the monument. This newly detected structure stands roughly 10 meters, or about 33 feet, tall, and the scanning data suggested the presence of both a ramp, likely representing a small stairway, and what researchers believe may be a religious altar positioned within it. Significantly, this innermost structure isn't positioned at the exact geometric center of the overall pyramid complex. Instead, it sits offset, oriented specifically in the direction of the underground cenote that the 2015 survey had already identified, a positioning detail that Chavez himself specifically highlighted as meaningful, suggesting a deliberate architectural and religious relationship between this hidden inner structure and the sacred water source concealed beneath the entire monument. This means that El Castillo, the pyramid millions of tourists have visited, climbed, and photographed over the decades, is genuinely a structure built in layers, a pyramid constructed around an earlier pyramid, which was itself constructed around an even earlier pyramid, all of it ultimately resting above a hidden underground cenote considered sacred within Maya cosmology. Jeffrey Braswell, an archaeologist at the University of California, San Diego, who has studied Chichen Itza extensively, noted that researchers had actually identified hints of a similarly layered structure within El Castillo as far back as the 1940s, but that the interior infrastructure discovered at that time was considered too structurally unstable to safely support any further excavation. Braswell also raised the genuinely intriguing possibility that this third, innermost pyramid might not even represent the final layer, suggesting there could potentially be additional structures nested even further inside. An archaeological puzzle he described as resembling a kind of ancient Russian nesting doll, one where researchers currently have no way of knowing exactly how many layers ultimately exist without further investigation. This raises an obvious, immediate question. If scientists know these hidden structures exist, sitting right there beneath layers of stone that have already been mapped in remarkable detail using modern scanning technology, why hasn't anyone simply gone in and excavated them directly? The answer involves a genuinely difficult, carefully considered trade-off that archaeologists working at significant, fragile historical sites like Chichen Itza have to weigh constantly between the scientific and historical value of direct physical exploration and the very real risk of causing permanent, irreversible damage to an irreplaceable monument in the process of trying to study it more closely. El Castillo isn't simply a solid block of stone that happens to have some hollow spaces inside it. It's a genuinely complex, layered structure, built and rebuilt over what appears to have been an extended period of Maya history, with each successive outer layer providing structural support and weight distribution that the entire monument has depended on for stability for well over 1,000 years. Excavating directly into a structure like this, even using the most careful, methodical archaeological techniques available, carries a real, substantial risk of destabilizing the same accumulated structural support, potentially threatening the stability of both the newly exposed inner structure and the massive outer pyramid that visitors see and climb around today. This concern isn't merely theoretical. It's precisely the same reason researchers in the 1940s made the deliberate decision not to pursue further excavation of the structural hints they'd identified at that time. And it remains a genuinely central concern shaping how researchers have chosen to approach this entire site in the decades since. There's a second, related complication specific to this particular discovery, connected directly back to that hidden cenote sitting beneath the pyramid's foundation. Recall that the 2015 survey found one corner of the pyramid resting directly on the edge of this underground water-filled cavity, a detail that already raised structural stability concerns among the research team before anyone had even considered attempting further excavation. Any excavation work conducted near or through this specific area of the pyramid would need to account for this existing structural vulnerability, adding yet another significant layer of risk and complexity to any potential future excavation effort focused on reaching these deeper nested structures. This is precisely why researchers have continued relying primarily on non-invasive scanning technology to study these hidden structures, rather than pursuing direct physical excavation, even though that approach necessarily means many specific details about these inner structures remain, for now, genuinely uncertain. Electrical resistivity tomography, the technique used in both the 2015 cenote discovery and the 2016 identification of the third nested pyramid, can reveal the general shape, approximate size, and rough internal features of a hidden structure, ramps, potential altars, general spatial layout, but it cannot provide the kind of detailed close-up information that direct physical examination would offer. Researchers can't yet say with certainty exactly what materials this innermost structure is built from, whether it contains any artifacts comparable to the jade-studded jaguar throne discovered in the middle layer back in 1931, or precisely how old it actually is relative to the other two layers of the pyramid surrounding it. This same fundamental tension between scientific curiosity and preservation concerns applies directly to the third major thread of this ongoing underground mystery, the sealed passageway discovered by researchers working with the Great Maya Aquifer Project, an initiative specifically focused on exploring and documenting the extensive network of underground caves, tunnels, and cenotes that honeycomb the limestone bedrock throughout the broader Chichen Itza region. In 2017, this research team, led by archaeologist Guillermo de Anda, the same researcher who had earlier commented on the significance of the initial cenote discovery, announced they had located and begun exploring a passage leading from a previously known burial chamber, referred to by researchers as the ossuary, a term referring to a space specifically used for the burial or storage of human bones down into the cave system underlying the temple pyramid. What the team found as they worked their way through this passage was genuinely striking. The tunnel appeared to lead directly toward the hidden cenote beneath the pyramid, the same underground cavity identified through the 2015 geophysical survey, but the passage itself was blocked, sealed off by stones that researchers believe were deliberately placed there, most likely by the ancient Maya themselves, rather than representing any kind of natural rockfall or subsequent, more modern obstruction. De Anda specifically described this as a passageway that appeared to have been intentionally closed off in ancient times, a detail carrying real potential significance for understanding how the Maya themselves regarded and interacted with this specific hidden water source sitting beneath their most important temple. Why might the ancient Maya have deliberately sealed off direct access to this particular cenote, especially given the clear religious and cosmological significance cenotes generally held within their broader belief system? Researchers have proposed several possible explanations, though it's important to be direct and honest that none of these has been definitively confirmed, and this remains a genuinely open question that continued research is actively working to address. One possibility involves the specific religious and cosmological role cenotes played within Maya belief more broadly. Cenotes were understood within Maya religious tradition as sacred portals, connecting the physical world to Xibalba, the Maya underworld, a genuinely significant, spiritually charged threshold between realms, rather than simply a practical source of drinking water. It's entirely possible that deliberately sealing off direct physical access to this specific cenote, the one sitting beneath their most important temple, represented a considered religious act in its own right, perhaps intended to protect or contain the sacred, potentially dangerous nature of this particular underworld portal, rather than reflecting any kind of practical concern about structural safety or accidental access. A second possibility involves the more straightforward practical matter of structural protection. If Maya builders were aware, as their own careful construction methods strongly suggest they were, that this particular pyramid had been deliberately built directly above a cenote specifically because of that location's religious significance, they may have simultaneously recognized the genuine structural risk this created, an enormous, heavy stone pyramid resting partially above open, unsupported, water-filled cavity space, and taken deliberate steps to seal and stabilize that vulnerable area as part of their original construction process, protecting the long-term integrity of their most important religious monument. It's also worth being clear about a third possibility, one that responsible archaeological reporting requires acknowledging directly. It remains genuinely possible that this specific sealed passageway simply hasn't been fully explored or explained yet, and that researchers currently working on this question don't yet have enough information to confidently determine which of these various possible explanations, or perhaps some entirely different explanation not yet fully considered, best accounts for why this particular passage was deliberately closed off in ancient times. As of the most recent publicly available reporting on this specific research effort, the passage remained blocked, and researchers had not yet successfully gained physical access through it to directly explore whatever lies on the other side. Taking a step back from these individual discoveries, the 1931 Inner Temple with its jaguar throne, the 2015 hidden cenote, the 2016 nested third pyramid, and the 2017 sealed passageway, and looking at this entire body of research together, a genuinely remarkable overall picture emerges of what the Pyramid of Kukulkan actually represents as a physical structure. This isn't simply a single, static monument built once and left unchanged. It's a genuinely layered historical record, physically encoding successive generations of Maya construction, religious practice, and architectural achievement, each new outer layer deliberately built to encase and preserve, rather than demolish and replace, the sacred structures and religious meaning that had come before it. This pattern of intentionally building new structures directly around and over earlier ones, rather than simply tearing down old buildings to construct entirely new ones from scratch, is actually a well-documented recurring practice found at numerous sites throughout ancient Mesoamerica more broadly, reflecting a genuine cultural and religious continuity in which earlier sacred structures weren't discarded as construction techniques and political circumstances evolved over time, but were instead carefully, deliberately preserved and built upon layer after layer across successive generations. This broader context helps explain why archaeologists studying Chichen Itza have approached these various underground discoveries with such notable, consistent caution, prioritizing careful, non-invasive scientific documentation over more immediate, dramatic physical excavation. Each successive layer of El Castillo represents a genuine physical piece of Maya religious and architectural history, preserved intact precisely because it was carefully sealed away and protected by the very construction methods that later Maya builders used when they expanded and rebuilt the monument. Excavating carelessly or too aggressively risks permanently destroying exactly the kind of irreplaceable historical evidence that non-invasive scanning technology allows researchers to study and document while leaving fully, physically intact for future generations of both visitors and researchers, potentially including future researchers equipped with even more advanced scanning technology than what's currently available. Technology that might eventually allow for a considerably more detailed, less destructive form of investigation than what's possible today. It's worth directly addressing something that distinguishes this particular archaeological story from some of the more sensationalized coverage of ancient hidden chambers found elsewhere online, because the honest, complete picture here involves genuine, well-documented scientific uncertainty existing alongside equally genuine, rigorously confirmed findings, and it's important not to blur that distinction. The existence of the hidden cenote beneath the pyramid is not speculative. It's been directly, independently confirmed through multiple separate geophysical surveys conducted by credentialed researchers at a major national research university using an established, well-understood scientific methodology. The existence of the third nested pyramid structure is similarly well supported by rigorous geophysical data published by the same credible research institution. The sealed passageway found by the Great Maya Aquifer Project has been directly physically explored and documented by archaeologists, up to the specific point where ancient stone blockage currently prevents any further physical progress. What remains genuinely uncertain, and what responsible reporting on this topic needs to clearly and honestly acknowledge as uncertain, is the specific, detailed content and precise purpose of these deeper structures. Exactly what, if anything, might be found inside that third nested pyramid, and exactly what lies on the other side of that deliberately sealed passage leading toward the cenote beneath the temple. This kind of genuine, clearly bounded scientific uncertainty, we know something significant exists, we have real, credible evidence establishing that fact, but specific important details remain unknown. Pending further investigation represents an entirely normal, honest, and frankly quite common state of affairs within active, ongoing archaeological research. It's considerably different from manufactured, sensationalized mystery, and it's worth appreciating that distinction, because the real, honestly uncertain story here is already remarkable enough on its own terms, without requiring any embellishment or exaggeration to remain genuinely compelling. So where does this leave things looking forward, and what might we reasonably expect to learn about these hidden structures in the years ahead? Given the clear, consistent pattern of caution that has characterized how researchers have approached this specific site throughout decades of study, it seems likely that any further significant progress in understanding these deeper layers of the Kukulkan Pyramid will continue to rely primarily on additional non-invasive scanning technology, rather than direct physical excavation, at least for the foreseeable future. As scanning and geophysical imaging technology continues to improve and advance, it's entirely possible that researchers will eventually be able to construct even more detailed digital models of these hidden inner structures, potentially clarifying some of the currently unresolved questions about the third nested pyramid's exact age, construction materials, and specific internal features, all without requiring any physically invasive excavation work that might risk the structural integrity of this genuinely irreplaceable ancient monument. Regarding that deliberately sealed passageway leading toward the hidden cenote, any future progress would most likely require careful, methodical work by trained cave and cenote diving specialists, professionals specifically trained and equipped to navigate exactly this kind of confined, partially flooded underground environment safely, working in close collaboration with archaeologists to ensure that any eventual access to whatever lies beyond that ancient stone blockage is achieved in a way that properly documents and preserves whatever historical evidence might exist on the other side, rather than risking damage to it through overly hasty or poorly planned exploration. What makes this entire story genuinely worth understanding and appreciating, beyond simply the inherent drama of hidden chambers and sealed passages sitting beneath one of the most visited ancient sites in the world, is what it reveals about the sheer scale of dedicated, patient scientific effort that's actually required to properly, responsibly study and understand a monument this significant, this structurally complex, and this culturally and historically important. Nearly a century has now passed since researchers first discovered that a second, older pyramid was hidden inside the visible structure of El Castillo. In the decades since that initial 1931 discovery, advancing scanning technology has revealed not just one, but two additional layers of genuine mystery: a submerged cenote considered sacred within Maya religious cosmology, and a third pyramid nested even deeper within the monument, deliberately oriented toward that same sacred underground water source. And throughout this entire extended process of discovery, researchers have consistently, deliberately chosen patient, methodical, non-invasive scientific investigation over the kind of faster, more dramatic physical excavation that might satisfy public curiosity more immediately, but that would also risk permanently damaging or destroying exactly the kind of irreplaceable historical and archaeological evidence that makes a site like Chichen Itza so genuinely significant and worth carefully, painstakingly preserving in the first place. The Pyramid of Kukulkan that millions of visitors photograph and admire today, the one that produces that famous, precisely calculated descending serpent shadow effect twice every year during the equinoxes, is genuinely only the outermost, most visible layer of a considerably deeper, considerably more complex structure. Underneath it sits an earlier temple, complete with its remarkable jade-studded jaguar throne. Deeper still sits a third pyramid, its exact age, contents, and full purpose still not completely understood. And at the very heart of the entire structure lies a hidden cenote, considered sacred within ancient Maya cosmology, deliberately sealed off from casual physical access, sitting in patient, undisturbed darkness beneath layer after layer of carefully preserved Maya history and religious devotion, precisely where the ancient builders responsible for this remarkable monument apparently intended for it to remain